You may have noticed that some of the buildings have come back in our reflection in the water, and this is because of some of the filters that we just applied to it. So what we can do, if you notice in our layers panel, again, because we used the Command Option Shift E, we are able to go back and make edits to our previous layers and make a correction to this. So what I think we're going to probably need to do is to adjust our fog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my New Alaska layer. I'm going to turn back on my other layers, and all I have to do is click and drag, and I bring those back. I'm going to click on my fog layer, and now I'm going to use a free transform command, which is Command T on my Mac or Control T on Windows. And then what I can do is I can resize my fog to cover a greater area. And we can see those buildings just a little bit. So let's be a little bit more cognizant of the buildings as we create our fog, and let me bring it down a little bit to help hide those buildings. So by resizing my fog, I can do a little bit better job now of hiding those buildings from view. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit more, maybe bring it down where it's more solid white. And again, what you're working on may vary from what I'm doing, because when you made your fog, you may have made yours a little more narrow than mine. Okay, I'm going to try this. We can barely see the building, and it really just looks like it's a reflection in the water. It doesn't necessarily look like that building that we had before. So now let's look at our New Alaska, where we saw the building here on the right-hand side where my pointer is, and we can also see the building on the left-hand side. But if we hide New Alaska, we can see now that we've done a much better job hiding those buildings. So now again, I'm going to do Command Option Shift E. If you're on Windows, that would be Control Shift Alt E. And I'm going to hide my bottom layers. So now I have a New Alaska. And what we're going to do is I'm going to right click on New Alaska, and I'm going to choose Copy Layer Style. And then I'm going to right click and paste layer style on layer 1. So now I've brought over that cover overlay that I created earlier. It brought it exactly the same, so I didn't have to figure out those settings again. But now again, paying a little bit more attention to the reflections in my water, what I can do now is go into my cover overlay. I'm going to double click on it to open up my layer style dialog box. And I'm going to move this off to the side so that I can see my buildings. I may have to move it back and forth so I can see the right side as well. And first, let's try changing the color that we've selected in our blend mode. So remember, if I click on the color picker box and call up the color picker dialog box, I still have the blend mode color burn applied to it, but now as I click and drag inside my color picker box, I can see what changes are going to occur using that same blend mode with the new color before I close my color picker. Okay, so I'm adjusting this to see if I can make any improvements on hiding that building. So that's my goal, because remember over here, I can see a little bit of reflection of the building. So I'm not seeing much improvement there, but I am seeing some nicer colors that I like. So I'm going to go with more of those purple mountains here. So I've got, on my hex number there at the bottom part of the window, I've got C9608F. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to pull this off to the other side and see how this area is doing with my building. Now I'm going to try a different blend mode. Let me go ahead and try overlay and see what that does. Now that looks kind of washed out, but again, let me move this layer style dialog box. It's doing a better job of hiding those buildings. Soft light, I lose my color effect, and I can try looking at various blend modes to see if I can do a better job of hiding my buildings, but yet still keeping a cool effect. Now here we can see the building is hidden here on the left hand side and as well as on the right, and I could maybe bring down my opacity some to remove some of that color, but that doesn't seem to be working either. So let me bring that up to 100. Let me go back so I can see the left side here, and let's try another one. So we're going to go through our color modes. That actually looks kind of cool, but I can see a little bit of the reflection there at the water line. And I'm going to see if I can't find a better blend mode to work with my reflection in my water and actually hide those buildings a little bit better than I did earlier. So let me scroll back up. If I bring down my opacity at this point, I can't really see what effect I'm getting very clearly. So how would I remedy that? I could click OK, and then below my layer 1 layer and above my fog layer, I can create a new layer and just fill that with a background. Probably white, which would be standard if I was going to print this on paper. So I've got my white fill for my foreground. I'm doing edit fill, and I can just use foreground color, or again, if white's not my selection of my foreground color, I could go to the bottom and choose white. So let's see what having a white background does. And I'm going to go back to my color overlay. I'm going to double click up here. And I'm just moving this off to the side so I can see more. And if I bring my opacity down, you can see we still get the color to it, but it's doing a much better job of hiding those buildings in the reflection of my water. Now let's look on the right hand side. Much, much better. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And now if I go back up to filter, filter gallery, the last settings that I applied, which were my texturizer and my crosshatch, are still there. Let me resize this to fit in my view, and we can see what kind of impact this is having in regards to any of the buildings bleeding through. And here we can see just a tad here on the right and just a smidgen on the left. I'm going to click OK, and our color overlay did a good job of hiding it. So again, because I copied all my layers into a new layer, instead of using my panel menu and choosing merge visible, which flattens my entire image and puts it all into one layer, I can't go back and edit. This way, because I pressed Command Option Shift E on the Mac and Control Alt Shift E on Windows and created a new layer on top with all the information on the previous layers, I was able to go back and work on those layers and combine them again as needed. So here's my old New Alaska that I created earlier, where we can still see a little bit of the buildings, and then here's my new Alaska. And again, I could go back into my effects and I could make some other changes to that, or I could make additional changes in my filter gallery if I want to improve my effect. But that's a way that we can go back and make corrections later, because when we first looked at it, everything looked fine. But once we started to apply additional effects and applying filters, then we started to have some problems with our overlays. So that's a way that we can go back and make edits later, because we took the route of making a new layer, combining all of our layers instead of flattening our image.